Culture Uncut. This is Culture Uncut. This is Culture Uncut. I am your host, Jason Spears, and Colt fans, we've got a lot to talk about. This is Culture Uncut. I'm your host, Jason Spears, back with another edition. And tonight's going to be an interesting show because we're going to do something we haven't done in a long time. But before I get into what tonight's show is going to be about, I want to share with you a couple things. One, I did not do anything on the draft. I think last year I took a year off, maybe even two, honestly, due to my health and just stuff in my personal life. But I want to let you guys know that I will be back this year with draft capsules of each player we select immediately after they are selected. So I'm happy to be back covering the draft for you guys. It will be on this channel, Culture Uncut. Excuse me. And I'm excited to kind of get back in the fold with that, watching guys and just getting back into the groove of evaluating talent. So I'm really excited about that. I asked Luke today when we spoke if he wanted to do it, and he declined. So we're going to be doing it on my channel. But with that caveat of bad news, there's a caveat of good news. Luke and I are definitely going to do a show sometime in the near future, kind of on the overall place of where the Colts are and what they need to do to move forward in a positive way, what needs to happen, just to kind of state of the Colts type thing. I know you guys really want to hear from him, and I do too as well, because we haven't really talked a lot of Colts, just personal stuff, catching up with each other. But he'll be hosting the show. I don't know when it's going to be because he's very busy, but we are planning on doing it. So I just wanted to put that out there for you guys so you would know to look out for that whenever that is. It should be in the next month, I would think. So there is that. Now, on to the show at hand. Tonight, I am going to dig back into the Bob Irsay vault. If you guys do not know who Robert Irsay is, he was the owner of the Colts from 1971, I think, until 1997. In his passing, he was given the Colts when Carol Rosenblum traded the Colts to he became the owner of the Rams, and Irsay became the owner of the Colts. So there's some kind of trade, whatever. Anyway, and he was the owner for 26 years, I think, or something like that. So there's a lot of stories about Bob Irsay. He had a serious alcohol problem, and so he was the owner when they were in Baltimore, and then for the first 13 years that they were in Indianapolis until his passing. So there are many, many Bob Irsay stories. I've shared a few, but there are so much and so many more. And I know a lot of my listeners and listeners for the Culture days and Culture Uncut days are much younger than me. So I like to kind of give you guys some football history, some Colts history. So I'm going to be telling another story tonight, an unshared story of Bob Irsay, and it's a doozy. So there's that. And then I've got about a 10-pack of questions that I'm going to try to answer to the best of my ability. And, it should be a fun show. Not a lot of negativity other than the Bob Irsay story, but some of that's pretty funny. So I'm going to start off with the Robert Irsay story, and then we'll get to the Q&A. So back in 1976, the Colts were coming off I think a division title in 1975. Burt Jones was the quarterback. They were a high-flying offense, had a very good defense, top 15, top 10 in the league. But they really kind of struggled. I think they lost in the first round of the playoffs in 75. I cannot remember who it was to. It might have been Pittsburgh on the road, but I probably should have researched that, and I didn't. So I apologize. That's a fail for me right there. But getting into the story, so the Colts are going through preseason. They're playing a game. I'm pretty sure it was in Detroit, and the irony of that is that was, I think, Bill Belichick's first year in Detroit as a special teams coach, I think, or assistant special teams coach. And he was in Baltimore the year before that. And he went to Marchibroda and asked for like $4,000 and a car to stay in Baltimore. And Marchibroda went to Joe Thomas, and Joe Thomas said no. So Bill Belichick went to Detroit in 1976, got $10,000 and a car, and became a coordinator. So there's that. Little. I'm just trying to give you guys some history. I know not all of this is Colt related, but it is semi-Colt related. So anyway, they're in Detroit. They're playing the Lions. They lose the game. Okay? Bob Irsay, as per usual, was drunk. I mean, hammered. He comes in the locker room after the game and just unloads on the players, screaming at all the players, cursing them up and down, saying all these things. And remember, this is a preseason game. It didn't mean anything. So in the middle of Bob Irsay releasing all these F-bombs and cursing up and down the team, Ted Marchibroda does what a leader does. He steps in front of them and he says, "You're not going to talk to my players that way." And then they get into it. And basically, Marchibroda resigned. It's like, I'm not working for you anymore. I don't want to I'm not dealing with this nonsense anymore. I've dealt with it enough. Because the first year was rocky, even though they won, and the second year was just starting off with more of the same. So he was done. He had resigned, and they didn't speak for 2 days. During that 2 days, okay, the coordinators. Maxie Braun was their defensive coordinator, and I think I don't know who their offensive coordinator was at the time. Both of those guys said, if you don't rehire Ted, we're done. We're gone. And this is like 4 days before the season starts. And the players said, we're not practicing until you bring him back, right? So basically, after 2 days, Irsay had to go to Marchibroda and basically beg him to come back, and he did. He did it for his players. If you know anything about Ted Marchibroda, he's a stand-up guy, players coach, very good coach, was an outstanding offensive coordinator in the league for a long time, had 2 stints in Indianapolis as a head coach, was the coach of the Miracle 95 Colts that led us to the unfortunate but incredible run in 95-96 where we lost in Pittsburgh. I say unfortunate because the last game really, was rough, but a great man, and he stood up for his players, so they came back. And the craziest thing about this story is if I would have told you this story and asked you what you thought their record was at the end of the year, you'd probably be like, maybe 3-11, because they played 14 games back then. Here's the crazy thing. They went 11-3, and all 3 of those losses were by 1 possession. So they were really, really a good football team. Number 1 offense. Burt Jones was amazing. And they won the AFC East, which wasn't easy to do back in those days because you had Don Shula and the Dolphins who were always in it. I think New England was a solid team in the mid-'70s with Grogan and those guys. And, it was just always a dogfight in that division. You still had the Bills, I think, were a little, were kind of middle of the pack, and the Jets were kind of middle of the pack as well. But the Dolphins were always tough. So winning that division was great. They got a home field game against the Steelers that year, and we all know what happens when the Colts play the Steelers. Sadly, it wasn't any different in the 70s. The Colts got smoked in the playoff game, 40-14. And after the game, some idiot flew a plane in the upper deck of Memorial Stadium, which, if you look up Google and look up Colts playoff game 1976 plane, they'll show you a picture of a plane crashed into the upper deck. Luckily, nobody was hurt. I don't even think the idiot that was flying the plane was hurt, but I think he was arrested. So there was that. And just for a little bit of football history, after that game, Pittsburgh went into Oakland, and John Madden, I think, has the highest winning percentage of all time. And Oakland beat the brakes off the Steelers, I think 24-7, and went on to win the Super Bowl in, I think, Pasadena, the Rose Bowl against the Vikings, 32-14. I think that was the game Willie Brown had that interception, and you all probably have heard that soundbite when he's like running down the field and the announcers yelling "Old Man Willie," or so that's a little bit of piece of history. 1976 was a great year for the Baltimore Colts. They made the playoffs. They won 11 games. I think Burt Jones might have been MVP, number 1 offense in the league. and it started off really poorly. So sometimes you can have really bad things happen and still win, but most of the time when really bad things happen like that, that breaks up a team. But it just shows how strong the core of that Colts team was, that they withstood all that, and their coach and coaches stood together against their drunken owner and found a way to win 11 games and go to the playoffs and play a home playoff game. So that is my first Bob Irsay story from the vault. There's many more. I think I'm going to make this like something I do pretty often in the off season when there's not a lot going on, because I do believe a lot of you guys are way younger than me, or at least you weren't following the Colts in the 70s, and neither really was I, because I wasn't even born till 77. So I like telling these stories. I know that there's a few people that are a little older, and it's I've had people tell me it's like beating a dead horse telling these stories, but the stories are the stories. It's what history is all about, and I think young fans should know the history of the franchise. So that's why I try to tell them, and I'm interested in NFL history in general and Colts history even more. So that's the story of Ted Marchibroda quitting or being fired, depending on who you ask, after a 1976 preseason loss to the Detroit Lions. Now we move on to your questions, guys, and there are some good ones. There's 10 of them, and I'm going to try to get through them all and give you the best answers I can give. Some of these are tough because I don't really know some of these answers, but I'm going to do my best. So, question 1, if the Colts trade for Trey Hendrickson, what compensation could the Colts afford? Well, I think any conversation with Trey Hendrickson starts with our first round pick, and then you go off of that. I don't know what the Bengals are going to want. I don't think they're going to want players. I think they're going to want picks, because they're trying to save up enough money to pay their receivers and their quarterback, and I think they already paid him, but they're trying to have as much money to spend on their offense as possible. So they're going to want young, cheap assets. So I'm guessing they would want a 1+ kind of deal. Like, I don't know if it would be 1 and a 2 or 1 and 2 3s, or I have no idea what they would take for him. But it would certainly start with our 15th pick. So that's, or 14th pick, whatever we're picking. I'm sorry. That's where it would start, and you'd have to build off of that. But I appreciate the question, and it's certainly worth the Colts calling about, because different from Myles Garrett, he hasn't demanded a trade, and he also hasn't said he wants to go to a Super Bowl contender, which everybody does, assumingly. But he knows Lou. He loves Lou. He has best season under Lou. I definitely think it's a call you have to make, because if you can get him, this defensive line is totally different. It transcends like what it's been. You know what I mean? So you make that call and see what they want, and you work with it. And I'm sure Ballard, I would hope, has at least made some sort of overture to the Bengals about Trey. But I mean, as far as like the exact amount of compensation it would cost, I know it would start with a 1, and probably a lot of picks, but I just don't know exactly what that would look like. But I hope that gives you some level of an answer. That's from John. Thank you, John. And here's another one from John. Do you think Ballard trades anyone away? Well, the only people that I think he would trade away are Braden Smith, because he's got 1 year left on his deal, if he's going to play, and the edge rusher that I mess the name up all the time, and I'm just going to call him Sampson. He's got 1 year deal, 1 year left on his deal as well. So those two guys, maybe. Outside of that, no. I don't think they're going to trade anybody. I don't think they have any tradable assets that are going to get what they want back in return. I'm hearing a lot of Mike Pittman chatter, but I don't see that. I haven't heard that, and I don't see that. So let's see. Question 3, if we re-sign Fries, what does that contract look like? So I did some digging, and PFF, there's some things I don't like about them, and there's other things I do like. I think this is a solid guess at what he's going to get. 4 years, $57.3 million, 14.3 per year. That was from PFF. He's coming off a year in which he suffered a pretty gnarly injury. But there's going to be a lot of competition for him. He's one of the highest, if not the highest. I think he's the second highest rated guard on the board for free agency, according to PFF grade. So he's going to have a lot of competition for him. It's not going to be an easy guy to sign for the Colts. I wish they were working on it now. Maybe they are, but that's what I think. I think it's going to be something like that. 4 years, $57 million. And hopefully they can get it done, because that's the guy. That is the one guy I think they have to re-sign for stability on their offensive line. And it's going to be tough. I think he could end up getting more years and more money than what's here based on the competition, because when you have competition, you can start upping things. Like, well, we want more years, or we want more money per year, or whatever. And so it makes it more difficult. So I would say that's probably what we're looking at for Will Fries. Moving on to question 4. Who do you want the Colts to get to push AR? That's from Disappointed Sports Fan. This is a tough one for me because I haven't dug into a lot of the backups, and I'm not even really sure who the free agents are. I do like the idea of Jameis. He would probably be number 1. I do like Derek Carr, even though I know a lot of people don't. He has to get cut, and who knows what he's going to ask for. I think Justin Fields is probably going to cost too much. I don't know, but I wouldn't be against it because it's the same style player. Russell Wilson, probably not. Aaron Rodgers, no. Marcus Mariota, maybe somebody like that. I don't know what his deal is. I don't know if he's out. Maybe even Jacoby. I don't know, but like people of that ilk, like Jacoby's a great teammate. I think maybe that might be a good guy to bring in. But again, I'm not sure on his contract status. I don't know if he got a 2-year deal last year or was it just a 1-year deal. But there's plenty of options to bring in to push him. And I think they're going to do their due diligence on that. Hopefully they will come up with a guy that will push him and get the best out of him. And that's all you can really ask for. You can't just hand him the job. You can, but what you see is what you get, like the last 2 years. So I think some of it's going to be like who can we get that we don't have to retailer the offense if AR gets hurt or if this guy wins the job. So that might limit who you bring in. We'll see. I mean, I wish I had a better answer for you, but I haven't heard anything about who they're, really looking at. I think they're still deep into like prepping for free agency and prepping for the draft. So I'm not hearing a lot, really, to be honest with you. So, but I don't know. To me, Jameis is like the perfect guy, but there's other options out there as well, and we'll see who those people are, and it'll come to fruition. We'll see. We'll see once free agency starts. I'm sure the Colts have their eyes on somebody, and they'll go after them, and we'll see who that person is. Who do you think the Colts will get? So I might have answered this wrong. Who do I want them? The first question was, who do I want them to go after from this disgruntled sports fan or disappointed sports fan? So, Carr, Jameis, maybe Marcus Mariota, Jacoby. Who do I think they're going to go after? Man, I don't know. I think they might go Trey Lance, Daniel Jones. There's somebody else out there. The kid Zach Wilson. Somebody like that's kind of in the same boat, but I really wouldn't go that route. I would go the route of more of a veteran steadying presence, because that's really what he needs. So, I don't know. I just have a feeling that's what they're going to look at. But I would hope Jameis. I think Jameis would be good on for multiple reasons, and I hope I think they'll look at him. I think they'll look at a guy like Brissett. They've had him in the building. We'll just have to let it play out. Let's see. Who is a must resign? Um, that's from Rello. I think it's clearly Will Fries. I don't think outside of him there's really any must resigns. I'd like to get Dio back. If Julian would take a 1 year deal, I'd like that. But I don't think any of these guys are make it or break it players. I do think Will Fries is super important to our offensive line, and I would love to get him back. But who knows what the price tag's going to be on that? So Will Fries is my answer. Does that necessarily guarantee it's going to happen? No. And there's some other guards out there that you could look to pivot if you don't get Fries. Tevin Jenkins, Zach Martin. There's other guys out there. I'm sure the Colts will, have backup plan A, B, C, and D or whatever if he doesn't re-sign with the Colts. But to me, you got to get him done. You just have to get him done. So that's who I think they must re-sign. Is there a player in free agency? Let's see. You'd be ecstatic to grab. Well, there's quite a few actually. Let me see. Do I have my list? Okay, so I went through the players on my last show that I thought would be really good free agent signings. So I'll give you three, one at each position. So at free safety, obviously the big fish is Javon Holland. I think he'd be a perfect fit for this defense and somebody that I absolutely think would fit in well with what we're trying to do. So he would be my first hope for free safety. For linebacker, I just love Dre Greenlaw, man. He comes from a winning program. I know he's coming off an injury, but he's one of the best linebackers in the game when he's healthy. I just think it's a risk that you have to take, and I think you can get him for 1 year on a 1 year prove it deal based on the fact he's coming off an injury. So that's a guy that I would sign. And then at corner, man, I like DJ Reed and I like Darius Ward. I think I would go Ward. I like the idea of bringing in players from winning programs. Greenlaw and Ward have been on some really good defenses, and so if we could get one of Charvarius Ward, Dre Greenlaw, or Javon Holland, out of those three, I would hope it'd be probably Javon Holland. But if we could somehow come away with Ward, Greenlaw, and Holland as our free agent defensive haul, I will be ecstatic. That would be amazing. And I think it would change our defense from like a garbage defense to a team that could really be a top 10 caliber defense. And that's a big, big difference from what we watched last year. So Holland would be my number one overall pick. But Holland, Greenlaw, those two guys, along with Shardarius Ward, I think would be the haul of hauls if they could pull that off. And then if they could re-sign Fries, man, get a good backup QB in here. Maybe pick up a veteran edge and maybe a veteran swing tackle. That would be the dream off season for me. But we'll see what happens. That's pipe dream stuff. It's probably not going to happen. But that if any of that happens, I'll be ecstatic. So there is one player, and there's multiple players. So I hope that answered your question, Rello. What does it mean for Ballard if the quarterback competition beats out Richardson? Well, it depends. If he beats out Richardson and we win games and win the division, then I think we found our quarterback, I guess, depending on who it is. And I think Ballard keeps his job because, again, it's about winning. But that would end the Richardson era in Indianapolis. If he loses his job, I mean, that's the end of the era. Because if you can't beat out somebody that they're bringing in specifically to push you to get you better and you don't beat them out, I'm guessing that's the end for Anthony Richardson in Indianapolis. So I don't know necessarily that means Ballard gets fired, but if the quarterback comes in that beats out Richardson and we win 5 games, yeah, they're all going to be gone, right? The whole shebang will be gone. Ballard, Steichen, and the quarterback Anthony Richardson. So, see, what do I have? And that was from Jarrett. And then 9, should Warren be gone? at 14, who do you see Ballard drafting? Well, just for me, there's a couple of guys. So if Warren isn't there, and Starks is there, I think he takes Starks. I don't think you can pass that up. And a lot of my mock drafts, Will Johnson has fallen, the cornerback from Michigan. If he's there, you got to take him. In my opinion, he's too good. He's an elite corner. So those would be the three guys. There's going to be a lot of discussion about edge and offensive line. I personally think if none of the three guys, Warren, Starks, or the other fella I just mentioned, are not there, I do think that Will Johnson, I do think that they will trade back into the 20s, and then I think they're looking at Loveland, the tight end from Michigan, Ravel, the corner out of East Carolina, and then also Xavier Watts, safety out of Notre Dame. Again, once you get into the 20s, it's who's the highest on your board. It could be an edge rusher, it could be an O lineman. I have no idea, but those are the guys that I've watched that I really like at positions that we really need. So Jihad Campbell at linebacker is another guy I love a lot. They could trade back for him. So there's a lot of options. I personally think they're probably going to end up trading back because I think our guys are going to be gone. So they trade back, acquire more assets, and you just gotta make the most of it, man. And again, some of this is predicated on what we do in free agency. If we fill holes in free agency, maybe there aren't guys, maybe we pass on guys, or maybe we do certain things that we might not normally do if we had a bad free agency period. Hopefully we have a good one and we can build our team and then add to it through the draft and not have those young players be thrown into the fire so quickly. So a lot of this is there's so many variables that go into it. A lot of it is, how we do in free agency, what players we get, who we're able to re-sign, all that kind of stuff. That all goes together with the draft picture in 2025. So I did the best to answer it. Hopefully I did. Let's see. And then Trey's last question is, will they trade up? I don't see it. I don't. I think they're kind of in I don't know. They're in no man's land, and I don't think they're in a position to give up assets. But I don't know. I mean, based on history, no. They won't trade up. They'll trade back. History is usually the best prediction of the future. So you kind of look at past history with Ballard, and I just, maybe this is the year it all changes and he's just hyper aggressive and he trades up and does all kinds of wild stuff. I have no idea. But based on what I've seen from him, I think what will happen is if the guy's not there at 14 that he wants, he'll trade down into the 20s and take the best available player in the 20s, accrue some picks from that, and then add extra competition and young players to the roster to compete with all the other young players on the roster, and hopefully the vets that we sprinkle in and make a better roster for 2025 than we've had, in 2024. So, Trey, always appreciate your questions, man. And finally, this question is from JL. Let's see. How big of a leap do you think the Colts defense can make in 2025? That is a great question, and once again, I'm going to use the word variables. There's a lot of variables that go into this. Obviously, who do we sign in free agency? Who do we draft? Then obviously the fun one, health. Who's healthy? Who makes it through the year? We had a rough year last year with injuries. Guys miss an extended period of times on both sides of the ball, and I guess that's normal at this point. But here's what I will say. If you get this coach good players, the defense is going to be much, much different. It's going to look much different. It is going to be a breath of fresh air. You're going to see, a coach that can adapt his style of defense to each offense that we're going to play. Now, you need players with high IQs and intellect to be able to kind of amoeba style the defense, mix it up, and be able to play different ways each week, because that's what he does. He picks the style of defense that he thinks is going to be most effective and game plans that way. And so the defenders are going to have to be very, very high IQ players and understand what the goal is and what their job is and what everybody else's job is, and work together as one. And I think that can happen. I do think that the key to that happening is having either really, really instinctual, smart young players or vets. And again, I go back to my previous video where I said I think most of our free agency money should be spent going after free agency defensive players, because it's a complicated scheme and it takes young players time to learn the scheme. And also, Lou, over his time in Cincinnati, has a hard time trusting young players playing it because they make a lot of mental mistakes. You can't have that in this defense, or it's going to get, things, one breakdown, mental breakdown, and you know what happens. So he likes the veteran leadership of veteran players, and so hopefully the free agency money that is spent will be mostly spent on the defensive side of the ball. If that's the case, I really think this defense can make a big leap. Barring obviously injuries and all that play a part, but I do think if you increase the competition and the level of play and set a standard for that level of play and hold each other accountable to that level of play, I do think they will. I think that because Lou's more of a Flus kind of accountability guy than he is a Gus Bradley style guy. Like he said in his opening thing, he's going to get on players. He's going to get on the best players. It doesn't matter. When mistakes are made, they're going to be handled and dealt with. It's not going to be the lollipop club in there anymore. So, and that's how Flus was with the Loafs. And nobody got through that unscathed. It's going to be the same thing with this guy. So I think you're going to see a higher level of accountability. And if a player doesn't play well, somebody else will be in there. That's the way this guy works. So, I think they're going to make a leap. I don't know how big it'll be because that's dependent on a lot of variables that I mentioned. But I think if they stay relatively healthy and keep like their key players healthy, I think they can get in top 15, top 10 in scoring defense, barring injuries, and making, getting impact players via free agency and via the draft. If they can do that, if they can make that leap into the top 15, that'd be a hell of a leap, because I think we're 25 in scoring defense, maybe even 28th. I can't remember, but we weren't great. And I just like this style of defense much more. It's a winning style. It's gotten a team to a Super Bowl, and I think he's the type of coach that will, he's flexible. I think we've had a lot of inflexible guys. I think this guy's a flexible coach. I think he will do whatever he needs to do week in and week out to put the best product on the field defensively to give us the best chance to win. And that's all you can really ask. So a long-winded answer to a very short question, but I hope I answered it. And I appreciate everybody that asked, that participated in the Q&A. I will try to have that up. Let's see, tomorrow morning. And let's see. Well, there's no football this weekend, and really nothing until March 10th. I think is when free agency starts. So not a lot going on. So I'll probably have more of these Q&As, and you guys can ask me draft questions in the comments, and maybe I'll just do a whole draft pod coming up. Like, you can ask me about specific players or whatever you want. Just leave it in the comments. Just give me a list of guys you want me to cover, break down, whatever, watch, and I will do that. And then I'll do another pod next week maybe and give you another Irsay story from the vault and go from there. So I hope everybody's week is off to a good start, and I hope that the rest of your week goes smoothly and you have a great weekend. I will talk to you guys very, very soon. Again, with the Luke thing, I'll let you know as soon as I know when we're going to do that. If you guys want to follow For the Culture, it's just look up For the Culture on YouTube if you want to follow it. And please if you can, share this show as well, because I'm still trying to grow it. I think I've got 700 people subbed, and I'm still trying to grow it, and it's rough. It hasn't gone. It's definitely a lot harder doing it with one person than it is doing it with two, because Luke was really good with a lot of the stuff that I stink at, as you can probably guess what those things are. But I'm just trying to grow the show and keep his channel going as well. So if you guys could do that, I'd really appreciate it. And again, leave some comments of some players you want me to watch, break down, and I'll do that on the next show. Next week sometime, maybe even this week, if you guys drop them fast enough. If you put them in there, I'll go through and break down some players later on in the week. Whatever you want, guys, I'm here for you. So with that, I'm going to wrap it up. Thank you so much for listening, following, and supporting me all these years. I always appreciate you guys. Like I said, have a great rest of the week, and I will talk to you soon. This has been Culture Uncut with your host, Jason Spears.